Welcome to the Seller Roundtable e-commerce coaching and business strategies with Andy Arnott and Amy Wees.
Can we talk about sourcing in India versus sourcing in China? So we're talking about kind of logistical costs, and we know China is set up for manufacturing and they're good with high volume. And what about India? Is it going to be more or less expensive to get ocean cargo to the US? And how is India set up? Are they fairly new with exporting to the US, or what can we expect? What are those differences between China and India?
Okay, so India is not new to exporting to the US. In fact, India is new to e-commerce sellers, I would say that. Okay, but one of the biggest differences I think people will see is that China offers a wider product range. So, basically you can find everything in China from, a needle to an aircraft.
Yeah.
But in India, in India, the product categories are limited. So there are specific products that you will find in India that India is competitively priced in. So that's one big difference I think that people will see. Another difference is that for most products that e-commerce sellers would source from India, most of the factories would be smaller scale. There'd be handcrafted products, or there'd be a lot of manual work involved in manufacturing the product. Whereas in China, of course, most of the production is, automated, and there's large scale production. In India, a lot of the businesses are also family owned. They're smaller businesses. So that's one other difference I think you'll find. Also, as I mentioned, language. So in China, language can be a barrier sometimes, whereas in India, that's not the issue. In terms of logistics and all of those things, so for the price of logistics and specifically ocean shipping and all, I think that you'll find the price is about the same as when you're sourcing from China. But the logistics for FBA sellers is not very advanced, is not very developed, I should say, yet, because there aren't a lot of Amazon sellers sourcing from India yet. And so, freight forwarders and other logistics companies, they're not very familiar with the process. But there are companies that are developing those services. So, for example, there are some logistics providers in our Facebook group who actually cater to e-commerce sellers, and they have, partnered with other logistics providers in the US, for example, and then they can even, ship your products to the US and then split the shipment in the US and send it to different Amazon warehouses, as an example. So I think increasingly there are more service providers that are catering to e-commerce sellers and providing these services. I think India currently is where maybe China was 3 or 4 years ago in terms of Amazon FBA. Like when we started doing the summit in April 2016, not many suppliers were really aware of Amazon FBA requirements and how to do the labeling and all of those things. So I think it's the same situation in India now, but over time, as more e-commerce sellers, go there, and as when our group goes there in October, I think we're going to be able to generate a lot of awareness. I think another difference you'll find is that there's not a lot of information available about sourcing from India, whereas from China you have blogs and YouTube tutorials, and you have experts like Steven who will post a lot of great information in all the different groups and all. So whereas in India it's more difficult to find suppliers, to find information, and the barrier to entry is a bit higher. But I think that's an advantage for people who are willing to spend the time and effort, and who are willing to try and find out how things work in India. So yeah, I think those are the key differences. In terms of prices, I would say for products that India is competitive in, you'll find that the prices are comparable to prices in China. But of course, if the raw materials are not available in India, and if there aren't too many production facilities of that product, the prices might not be comparable to China.
And you may have a little bit longer lead times as well, just because, there are handmade things, and the we're not as advanced, right, as far as the factory processes and stuff. But I think you're right, Megla, about there being some advantages there, especially if you're sourcing a product that India specializes in and can remain very competitive in. So it's a great thing if you're trying to learn to source from India, that there are people like Megla that are willing to hold your hand. I can't imagine, I went to Canton for the first time this last time, and it was very scary for me. I was thinking, wow, I already sourced from China, but I'm a world traveler, but it's still a new country. I don't speak the language. I don't know what it's going to be like there. And so it was so great to be going with a group of people, and I think that's why so many people love going on the China sourcing trips. You get to connect with other entrepreneurs. You get to kind of get the feel for the lay of the land before you go by yourself, if you choose to go by yourself in the future.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for live Q&A and bonus content after the recording at SellerRoundtable.com. Sponsored by the ultimate software tool for Amazon sales and growth, SellerSEO.com and AmazingAtHome.com.